Welcome, welcome, Jokoistas, new viewers, old viewers. Welcome to August 1st, the 2024 Black August, Joko Conversation. I'm Yusef, my partner Tasha.
Peace, y'all. Good to be here and this is our totally free form chop up session. We look forward and hope that our good comrade, good brother James Simmons will be able to join us and jump in on the chants and the chat and rants and all of that at some point, as we kind of just chop it up around stuff that's moved us this week, what's at the top of the news and, how we are living, moving, and having our being in all of this madness and goodness. There's good news as well. There's good news happening.
That's right.
And as always, anything that we do in Joko, we acknowledge the land that we are doing the work on. So everything that we do, we're trying to do to aid and abet the liberation of human beings from the clutch of this world cultural moment. Everything we do is about liberating African people from our particular entanglement in this mad cultural moment. And we recognize that as African descended people, we're doing this work on the unceded territories of the people of the First Nations, of the indigenous people of Turtle Island. Okay, we're using the term, however many different indigenous groups use it, we're acknowledging that term and uplifting it and asserting it. And of course, the folk on whose lands we directly are doing the work are the Tongva people and the Chumash people of the LA Basin and what is now called the LA Basin area, and this coastline, right? This coastline geography, right? Got to go broad, trying to put things in proper perspective. You can't use regular terms. You got to reach. How do I say? Where are we? We got to properly reorient. And so, in that spirit, we welcome anybody who's tuning in, and glad to have you with us. If we are able to, feel free to do comments, because we'll be able to see them and maybe even respond. Okay, so good, brother Yusuf, where are we in the world today? What you think?
That's a great question. And Lord, where are we in the world today? Kind of on a precipice, it feels like. And both positive and negative possibilities. Because everywhere you turn, there's crisis, right? Everywhere you turn, there's crisis. The so think about where we are in the world today, and for the because this was just going to be a chop it up session, right? Just a check in session. You said, some of our thoughts on the current news. The So we prepared no specific flyer for it, right? Or announcement, very specific. So I chose the Free Palestine, right? What would be an appropriate image, um, because in some ways, right, that is still the news and very much the news, and yet in a way not so much, right? I mean, it certainly seems to have fallen out of the first round of news type
Mhm.
when you're watching the news at night or in the afternoon or whatever. The So I wonder, school will be starting soon, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
campuses within the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
uh, high school and college campuses. And should we, and I hope, I think yes, actually, expect new encampments. And I don't know that all the encampments disappeared, right? Other than
Mm.
disappearing from the news on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? So there's that, right? And then all the other, the resistance, right? The underreporting, at least in
Mhm.
mainstream media, as far as I can tell, right? Underreporting, though, I have to, I'm not reading the paper every day, watching, what is reported on mainstream television news, cable news, catch things on YouTube. The And then what stories might come through Twitter, right? If I have
Mhm.
on it. The
Mhm.
So it's like another story, right? That is like, well, certainly under seems to be undercovered in the West. Anyway, I haven't seen material, and
Mhm.
that's the and actually I can't even really comment other than to say that this has happened, right? But
Mhm.
the mediation of the People's Republic of China bringing together Hamas and Al Fatah, right? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and if so, again, I haven't read the article, listened to anything specific yet, other than just the reports that this has happened. It's moving forward, right? That right, that they are mediating or have mediated. I assume it's an ongoing process, right? Even though I did see some images of
Mhm.
folks sitting at a table, signing things, and then I wonder if that means um, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, it can be, will be brought into, some sort of united front. The Democratic
Mhm.
Front for the Liberation of Palestine, right? Are they going to be
Mhm.
brought in? Um, and I know the Popular Front is explicitly, Marxist Leninist, and that's like you still can't be that, right? In so many cases, still, right? But
Mhm.
the world is in crisis. Capitalism,
Mhm.
there's so many, even people who won't say they're Marxist or Marxist Leninist or um, will say they're anti-capitalist, right?
Mhm.
Capitalism is at
Mhm.
its highest popular tide, so to speak. Um,
Mhm.
it's, so as you were
Except
saying, there's better news, there's good news out there too, and all of it is indicating the crisis in the empire, in the leading
yeah.
um, corporate nation of the empire, and
Yeah.
all that. So you were about to say something.
I was just about to say that, yeah, that is, uh, part of the good news, part of the good news, the stories of, the resistance to the Western European hegemony, just, kind of, uh, surfacing and sallying forth, whether it's reported or not,
Right.
whether it is reported
Mhm.
or not. And the importance, the continued importance, even of our little, what we're going to do about an hour of chatting tonight, um, in terms of just adding to whatever is available to raise awareness of, um, I don't even want to call it counter narratives,
Mhm.
though, yeah, these are narratives that counter
Mhm.
the dominant narrative, and the narrative that perpetuates and sustains the status quo and oppression and all these kinds of things, and keep people functioning within it. But at a certain point, um, it's good to also define ourselves in a position of agency and activity rather than reactivity,
Yeah.
countering the narrative, fighting back into, no, asserting, a proper narrative, um and a proper approach to narrative, like this whole business even of the news cycle and what is out of the news cycle, and you know what I mean. So the um with Palestine and the genocide no longer leading in that way, in the way it was hot and heavy, you know for so long, the tendency in the culture is that it is no longer a thing, and that's just an unconscious thing. Ask someone directly, intellectually, they're going to
Mhm.
say, "Oh yeah, that's a thing, and it's current news, and it's current event. I got, my notion." But the actual, the kind of the lived, feeling and the lived sense of it is that that's something that has faded. And um and someone might even, come up with a get an impression that it's something that has been resolved, or maybe,
Mhm.
somewhat, you know what I mean, just in terms
Mhm.
of our dependency on the news cycle,
Yeah.
for the continuity of narratives as well. And it's that continuity part.
Yeah.
So even as we talk about news cycles and whatnot, it makes me think of how important it is in reinvesting and re-inspiring a pro-intellectual culture of, saying, hey, we need to come out of cycles and get into sustained dialogue,
Sustained
sustained
dialogue,
conversations.
some depth investigation, and yeah.
Yes, and repetition, and, weighing and raising the point, and
Yes.
countering the, what I'm saying, and real examination, which necessarily there's something also about the news cycle that is aligned with the
Mhm.
cutthroat pace
Well,
of,
exactly, yes.
gotta get it quick, and because you gotta go
Everything's
here,
got to be
where are you
moving
going?
on, right, to the next
Yes,
new, and it is called the news, right? And what's the
yes,
next new thing? And it is yeah, right. That
and
which doesn't have to be that way, but
no,
it's in structure,
it
that
does not.
you know,
Yes.
increasingly, right? So,
Absolutely. We're so structured toward bites,
mhm.
potato chip style entertainment, potato chip style eating, potato chip style, quote unquote, news
Mhm.
narratives, each, right? That's the whole
Mhm.
psychology of the bite.
Right.
It's bite size. So it's a constant refreshing of the taste sensation. Just, oh,
Right.
it's all about a taste sensation. News is like a mental taste sensation. And it's the opposite of what is really needed for human beings to process and weigh information. But there's this, right? This sense of
In
pushing
terms of,
forward.
yeah, be to be an actually informed
Yes.
citizen of the world, whatever, but
Yes.
to actually, be
Yes.
informed, engaged, have some sense of, the world, the world around us, and the processes, at work, right? The And it's that recognition, right, makes it so damn hard, because so much of the mainstream media, right? It is so pervasive. And there are the alternative sources, but it's so pervasive, and and people recognize. I mean, this, we're not saying anything new, right? It's been,
Mhm,
the what do they call it? The sound bite has been an issue,
mhm,
forever. That transformation of the news that happened in the 70s at some point, right? Local news, becomes all chatty and everybody's friendly and all that stuff, right.
mhm,
But that's why, at that conference, the Trump interview at the conference, right? What is it? The National Black Journalists Association.
mhm,
And he
mhm,
starts right off the bat, right? Attacking the sister. Um, and he says, don't you work for ABC? I think of
mhm,
them as they're a fake news organization anyway.
mhm,
There are going to be some cheers.
mhm,
People recognize, right, that but it isn't all fake. I mean, this is just,
mhm,
because it can't all be fake, right? It doesn't
mhm,
work that way. So it's
mhm,
just enough, or how it's
mhm,
framed, and as much as anything, omission, right? What isn't reported,
mhm,
than how things are framed. So you're going to, there will be enough people who are going to give that response that, might sound like approval, of
mhm,
the candidate, of the messenger, rather than the obvious message. I mean, it's in so many ways low hanging fruit. The
mhm,
And yet, things like ABC, CBS, NBC, um, network news are really where people get most of their news, not the cable
mhm,
shows, right? Whatever,
mhm,
that, not the cable
mhm,
news show.
mhm,
The
mhm,
And they do their job. I mean, whatever, it is the bourgeois press. I mean, so it's the bourgeois press, right? And they're, certainly absolutely an important cog, right, in the system. Um, at least, for that, I was going to say facade of democracy, but I don't want to say that, right? Actually, I don't know that that's completely true. Uh,
mhm,
but certainly, the really limited, you know, forms of, democracy, and um,
mhm,
you know
mhm, mhm,
they're engaged in reproducing the system, right? And
mhm,
what leads the news, that news
mhm,
cycle, that that
mhm,
is, probably is pushed by those in power, right?
mhm,
Government,
mhm,
government agencies, government,
mhm,
sources,
mhm,
corporate sources, right? And
mhm, and even to whatever extent, um, most of us are have some kind of awareness that that is the case. I don't there's not a kind of clarity about the what that influence looks like. I think that in general, and I always say we because I don't, even as I learn whatever I learn every day, that gives me a little bit more understanding of how this thing is working. Um, no point in uh, asking how, you know, other Americans are thinking and taking myself out of that soup. I came
mhm,
up in this soup. I came up, had the blessing, had certain blessings of direction toward social critique, social
mhm,
criticism, but came up in the soup, and so um these we's are honest we's,
mhm,
um and the way we imbibe this, the news and the way the news stands for. It's like kind of like there's some residue, like some kind of like an echo chamber, right? And it fades and goes back and forth until it finally fades. Some memory of a notion that there's solid information is coming through the press because the press is established. The free press is a principle of so and so, and this is reliable, such and such, and you know what I'm saying. But at the same time, the lack of awareness of how corporate mechanisms work and influence, and a lack of a tangible way to describe that, makes it very shadowy. We might have a notion that that's happening, but we still take at face
Mhm,
value,
mhm,
what we see, what is presented. We take that at face value.
mhm,
And just also, having to adopt again a different attitude of what information feels like, uh, as a process and not a product, really, not a
mhm.
product. Here's the, at where the
Right.
product, a some
A
kind of new
process
item of information,
of
because
making
even
knowledge.
yes, and
Yeah.
because even this news, the idea of news, um, if you're actually just trying to examine some, you know, newly occurring events, these are, patterns that are repeating and that are grounded in, deeply rooted and long
Mhm.
established social
Yeah,
configuration. So, so there is what news, what do we mean
right,
by nothing is new here,
right. Yeah.
actually.
Well,
You know what I'm
new
saying?
manifestations of,
Exactly.
certain structures, right? Or, or yeah.
Exactly. And it's a qualitatively different experience in terms of how uh say social critics are using the the democracy of social media to push discourse and push discussion. That it's a qualitatively different feeling. One kind of drives you to deeper questions, to answer deeper questions, to you got to look up that source, you got to get some more information, you got to get some more background, you got to get some more, but the notion of the prime time news is this is what's important today, and so you
Yeah.
can go back to your
Well, there's a lot of that
real
on
world
social
of
media
of
too.
binge watching.
There's a lot of that on social
Say
media
that
too.
again, I'm sorry?
There's a lot of that on social media too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which is also, you know, profit motive, and I mean, it's mind blowing, right? It's many of these tech billionaires, right, who are, some of the most retrograde, reactionary, forces, in that, corporate elite, right? And because
Mhm.
yeah, because there is that, right? And but the weird, or not, no, what the algorithm puts you in your bubble, right? So the I'm getting lots of tweets, that are, you know, typically revolutionary, right, or something,
Mhm.
right, or
Mhm.
resistance, and I'm tweeting them out, but that's all that comes in, right? It's so
Mhm.
I might even get a warped view of, just how many people out there are, thinking like me, or
Mhm.
some level of comrade, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I know, and that really that became very stark to me, because I got the two Schwitters, right? The one
Mhm.
strictly political, um, and then my sports, Schwitter,
Mhm.
to get out my frustration during a frustrating part of the game and see that I'm not alone, right? While if
Mhm.
I'm watching the game. So anyway,
Mhm.
I retweet and like and retweet, some political stuff, right? And mostly sort of mainline politics, right? Um, and it's like suddenly, that feed only gets political stuff in it, right? That I had. It's like, I got to ignore the stuff and start over tweeting sports to get the sports back up. I think James is called in, and as you see, Tasha is talking without sound, right? So, and y'all are being forced to listen to me talk about my Twitter.
Exactly. No, it's all right. Exactly. That
But
was James
but
Bond.
that's the thing is I know it's like where's my sports, right? Just
Yeah.
a little consistent tweeting on this presidential race, and suddenly
Mhm.
that's all I'm getting, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
it puts you, or at least on Twitter,
Yeah.
right? It puts you in a bubble, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder, how much gets out to whom. And as we
Uh-huh.
all know, or should always be reminded, these tech companies are snitches,
Yeah.
and all this is essentially military technology
Yes.
and
For
makes
its
everyone's
purposes.
easy, right?
For its purposes. Yes.
But again, like the revolutionary must do, the guerrilla, sometimes you go into battle without a weapon because you got to take the weapon from the imperial soldier,
And so forth. So
and so
how
forth.
however it works. we'll we got to work it. So yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
certainly social media is not there aren't any foolproof safe spaces. There aren't
no,
any spaces that are not taintable. But
right?
there
Sonny's
is
Blues.
more. Huh?
James Baldwin, Sonny's Blues. The father says, "Safe. There ain't no safe place."
Ain't none.
Bottom line.
You just have to be awake. You have to be alert. You have to, like, literally, yeah, that's like, a anyway, but that within that space
Hmm.
is where we do find um discourse that
Yeah.
can help us to see, can actually help us to see and change a quality of relationship that we're certainly not going to get with the that we don't get with
No,
the consumer news, with the network news, with the directly corporate sponsored news. And which takes me
including
to
public
brings us to some of the
broadcasting
things
in
that
the
we were
United States.
that
I said,
huh?
including public broadcasting, public broadcasting system in the United
Mhm.
States. And for that fact, BBC, I mean,
Mhm.
they putting out, you know, uh, government sponsored, but they ain't putting out nothing revolutionary.
So
Anyway.
yeah, so and you and a blessing to be able to make that observation and make that assertion because of background, because of a knowledge base, because there's the ability to scrutinize. But in some of the things that we've been batting around and talking about, um, you know, some of the things that are in the news cycle and places where urgency, we're talking about false urgencies and misdirections and all those kinds of things, but um,
Hmm.
where focus can be applied, some of this Project 2025 stuff, some of this Trump, as you started mentioning, Trump being interviewed by the Black journalist, that's in the forefront. Um, these the folks' awareness, particularly with this Project 2025, new focus on um, authoritarianism. I think folks are learning this word. It's like
Hmm.
the word of the week. At least. You know, let's see how long it stays in the news cycle. Uh,
James joining us.
yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
there we go.
James Simmons.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Greetings. You
Yeah,
all, yes, sir.
yeah. So I'm at Chuco's. and um, somebody is hopefully going to relieve me at the door. So I
What's
don't.
happening at Chuco's?
Black August opening program.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, I have to go. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. Good.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see.
Good.
We'll bring them back on. The but yeah, the
He's back, hun.
oh, okay.
Hmm.
Thinking about that. Right. What did you say? Authoritarianism's the word of the week. Is that it?
The word of the week. Yeah,
People are learning about it.
looking it up,
Yeah.
figuring out what it means. What is it? What
And
should be
right, and what that means, right? What
considered.
future are people crafting, for the
Mm-hmm.
world? Um,
Mm-hmm.
what's being crafted here? What's going on? Some of this. I started what a week ago. I learned of this concept movement. Yeah, I guess movement, the Dark Enlightenment, also called, or maybe better known as the neo-reactionary movement.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
James, we're gonna mute
there
you.
were two because the one is outside.
Let's mute James while he's talking.
I'm sorry.
And that's all right.
Let me mute myself.
okay, there you go. It's muted. The
Yeah.
Yeah, these people are close to power, right? The folks behind the Dark Enlightenment. It's not some far-fetched stuff, right? Or at least, yeah, it's not far-fetched at all, right? What they're
Yeah.
actually theorizing and planning and have been for a while, right? At least since the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thinking in the Dark Enlightenment, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is this guy Peter Thiel, right? Tech billionaire.
And
behind-
let's reel back a moment and
Yeah.
draw the connection with some kind of connection with the Project 2025 that folk are hearing about, and this Dark Enlightenment business and
There's
this election
in some ways,
and whatnot, and authoritarianism, not as a moment, not as a discussion about Trump's plan and Trump's being Trump centric, but this deeply rooted movement, long established, uh, ingrained, and hoping to, have its moment here. So that being said, Dark Enlightenment is
well, you can't take Trump out of it, right? Because Trump is an important instrument for this implementation, and you already see that in the court, right? People are talking about, the Project 2025 coming out of the Heritage Foundation. The most conservative judges are these recent, Trump judges, right? Were all, recommended through the Heritage Foundation. And whether any of those, any specific individuals in or involved in the Heritage Foundation are, specifically engaged in Dark Enlightenment stuff, I couldn't say, right? I don't recall that, specifically in any of the reading that I did over the week. But it's that same line of thinking, and what is the heritage, right, of the Heritage Foundation, and that pretty sure that's a call back to the notion of Western civilization and their Western heritage. And I've recently learned of although it's not news, because I remember this during the Reagan administration, right? The number of like conservative Catholics in the Heritage Foundation, or that are in some of these Republican, in the Reagan administration, and which itself was kind of new. Um, with a long tradition of working class, Catholics and the history of the United States. A lot of those immigrants, coming in from southern and eastern Europe. The So that was something kind of new, but just like a lot of things, right? A lot of the changes of the mid 20th century, including the Roman Catholic Church um, attempting to modernize, through Vatican Council II. And there were, plenty of, this whole array of Catholics who were completely opposed to that, right? And completely opposed to getting rid of the Latin Mass, as if there was something special about Latin other than it was the language of Roman administration, right? And it had to be either Latin or Greek, right? For but this elevation. So I'm not surprised to hear that, right? That these folks that's who's behind the Heritage Foundation, that kind of conservative um, attempt to, I can't remember who said it, um, from these circles, roll back to 20th century. And these dark enlightenment folks coming from the tech world, this guy, Curtis Yarvin out of San Francisco, um, very influential on what's his name, Teal guy, this a professor of philosophy in the UK, right? Paul Land, I think is his name, begins writing about it. And, they're, what's the Peter Thiel quotation? Freedom and democracy are incompatible. They are, committed to the dismantling of whatever democratic structures there are. Um, Neo-monarchists, and as you were reading, right, not a monarchy of blood, but a monarchy, a aristocracy of IQ and
Yeah.
technical sat or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, even the notion of something like a city state, right, and instead of the nation state, whatever, right? But I mean, very retrograde, you think of it that way. So anyway, these folks, they've been engaged with the Trump campaign since the first campaigns. I said the movement goes back, right? These forces have been at work for a very long time. And these are like elites, right? This is the intellectual wing of what people think of as the alt-right.
Hold on a second. James, what I'm going to do is mute you, and when you're ready to make a point or put something in, just raise your finger and we can, okay, unmute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why does it matter? Why does Peter Thiel matter? And I was going to look up her name, Sister Kwama, who was elected as an on a socialist as a socialist and on a socialist platform to the city council in Seattle. Maybe during the Obama administration. I was watching an interview with her right on her YouTube channel. Well, she and her partners on strike, right? Labor centric channel, and she mentioned it right in talking about Trump's vice presidential pick. And near the end of the conversation, and assessing the pick, she let out that he's even influenced by these dark enlightenment. I'm like, dark enlightenment, what is that? So I started looking it up, right? And but that's how close to power they are, right? And involved in it, right? They are, this is, what it means for Elon Musk to be like, hey, 45 million a month, right, or whatever, right? To
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
get the shell and the vehicle in place. Though I did see yesterday that he's beginning to rethink that as these things are being revealed, like the response to Project 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, maybe like you said, they maybe spilled the beans too soon. The
Mm-hmm.
and as more people are there are questions of whether he should have picked this guy, as this is coming out and it's unsavory and weird to people, but I think folks need to understand it is more than weird. um,
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm.
they're quite methodical
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about, and if even if it's a small group of thinkers or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Professionals.
Mm-hmm.
There are already foot soldiers out there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, that's yeah.
Which makes me think of, and I have more questions actually about the Dark Enlightenment, and this is the piece, yeah, right, that the vice presidential Republican candidate is has this kind of direct influence, but when
And
you
a
read in it,
convert to Catholicism.
he is a convert to Catholicism.
Mm.
Okay. So this is all of these dots are very interesting to connect. In reading about it, it reads like a different expression of the same basic theme, white male supremacy, maximum control, uh, exploitation uh, uh, of a multi-oppressed mass, how to, for to exploit for whose bodies and sensibilities and skills to exploit to further enrich and empower
This
this Olympian, you know,
for what
elite
they think is a more stable world, right?
for and more stable white world. What is
Mhm.
that? So much of this is fantasy. What's interesting to me is, one of the things that we often we say in the Black community is like, okay, yeah, authoritarianism, fascism, yeah, this is how we live. This is daily life.
Mhm.
This is what it is, which makes me think here we are in Black August, right? The month of resistance to that, to the violence of the state
Mhm.
in its various forms. Yeah. And it makes me want to ask James a question about um about this piece. How are you putting those things together? Or how would you put those things together? If this is a good time for you to talk, James, or if you're dealing with something else, it's a good time for you to talk. Okay, so yeah, so that's the question. How would you kind of put those things together? The and Black folks are uh have always lived in uh, as subject of an authoritarian despots, and what makes a Project 2025 different, if it does, in the context of our resistance, in the context of our imprisonment and continued oppression.
Yeah, the what's his name? Used to be UN ambassador. Came up with this theory that black people were poor because of broken homes.
Mm-hmm.
Moynihan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's his
Mm-hmm.
name?
Moynihan.
Moynihan. Yeah.
Moynihan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Moynihan.
Patrick Moynihan.
Moynihan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And his head was where he was a representative of the white political intellectual class. He was a part of it at least, and he articulated something in the United Nations, which I think was a truism. The United Nations, the United States was, at least in a way, uh, uh, subject to rule by a dictatorship of the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And black folks in this country have certainly, even that first pretense to democracy, all men are created equal, blah, 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 uh, as you excluded 90% of the population,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was, as you said, a white male supremacist state. Well, they were being held to account. Okay, Constitution, you know, slavery is an evil. It's no longer necessary, etc. We look stupid in front of the world, so we're going to give them rights, even though you had to kill Lincoln to do it. But they were still, you know, white male supremacy until the 19th Amendment. And then, oh my God, you let women in. So no, it was no longer white male supremacy, but it was still white supremacy, the dictatorship of the majority. Then you finally had inkling of democracy with the passing of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. So there's this slow chipping away of white male political power.
Right.
And now white people in general are not going to be the majority. And this is where I think the impetus to 2025 and many this voter suppression, this running away from democracy into this authoritarianism, even though they've been authoritarians from the beginning.
Right.
But even the pretense to democracy is over because they can't hold on to power. This is why you have Proud Boys being more explicit, saying we are Western civilization chauvinists.
Chauvinist, that's right.
And which means what? White supremacy. Right? The doctrine of discovery. You know, we rule over everything we find. People, land, business, everything.
Everything.
So now, and Trump has articulated it in a stupid kind of way, but he has still articulated it for the masses. It's like, we want our country back.
Yep.
Go back to your country. Telling people who were born in the United States, go back to your country. Well, I thought this was my country. No. And let's go back to the Supreme Court, Dred Scott. Black people were never intended to be citizens. Never. So it's preposterous to talk about them gaining rights. We don't want them to have. And women, no. So this whole that's this incel stuff. It's like a lot of these people you would think are incels, even though J.D. Vance talks about family and these other people talk about family. And you know, if it's like incel, what is that? All right. Was it involuntary celibate? Sexually frustrated, as my friends say, sexually frustrated so-called straight guys. But looking to the future, where white men will no longer automatically wield political power, supremacy, I think that has a lot to do with this move towards so-called authoritarianism. Because they've been authoritarians all along, but they're going to lose that automatic, the dictatorship of the majority, because they will no longer, they still want a dictatorship, but they no longer want democracy because it doesn't fit. Oh no, we have to have white men run this country because that's the way it was planned.
The Western country, right?
Yeah, the natural order of things.
The natural order of things, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what.
How, because you know there's all of the notions of what can't happen here, and Americans' notions of themselves as the, you know, divinely endowed harbingers of this thing called democracy, you know,
version of the promised land.
and, absolutely. what does it take? What is it taking to uproot that, even closely held identity, and how does this happen? How do um, you get the population to disavow the democracy that they have so closely identified with, and begin to avow, the authoritarian models, and what is that going to sound like, and what is that? I mean, clearly, everybody talks about the never mind the dog whistles, but like, for instance, with the great replacement theory and the propagandizing and inciting of the fears and what have you, the transphobia or hysteria, the anti-trans hysteria, and all of these little mechanisms um, driving folk to wish for and accept and look toward um, strongman politics, demagogue,
Well,
person.
James kind of said it already. The
Huh?
James kind of said it. You tell them that they need to take their country back, right? That if they want to save their democracy, then they need to do these things, right? These people are, bringing the country down. They're what's wrong with it. They're destroying your democracy, right? So, I mean, that's it, right? You tell them that they are under attack, and then they can look at the world and say, well, yes, it is under attack, right? I never used to see these rainbow flags around, right? That never used to be. We didn't used to do this. It wasn't like that, right? Never taking the
Mhm.
time to think, well, were people able to do this at the, do you see
Right.
how things move forward?
Mhm.
But that's not part of the thing. So yeah, you tell them, right? How you get people to go to war. You're under attack, and if you don't give us, if we don't do this, then you aren't going to have your country anymore. If you don't give the power to us, you aren't going to have democracy anymore, right? And nobody's thinking about whether or not that matches because they feel under attack. You know,
Mhm.
biggest stars in the society. Now, who's winning gold medals for the United States, right? And
Mhm.
even that stuff, right? The people of color they love the most, they hate. Just as this is why I don't remember, white players, having hassles with the police so much. I'm still trying to figure out why this brother got pulled over, plays for the Rams, got pulled over at 2 a.m. like last season. Now, he got cited for having a gun, which I think he had a permit for, right? But had
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
But there was never
Yes.
any reporting about why was he pulled over? There was no
Mhm.
report of like driving under the influence or erratic driving or why
Mhm.
was he pulled over? It ain't even
Mhm.
come up. Well, why was he even pulled over? But you're not
Mhm.
allowed to drive the streets. I mean, like James said, it's been authoritarian for us. We know that and shit, but people don't realize how what authoritarian means for the rest of them in a way.
Mhm.
They don't, like I said, there's no living memory of it, right? There's no living memory of what used to happen to unions in the 19th century, right? Or even shit in the early 20th century. People don't remember that, right? They don't know.
No living memory. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's not taught, right? Labor history
Mhm.
isn't there isn't a labor section of the main newspapers, right? And it's I mean we can go through every part of the dang society, right? We know public education was working. That's why it had to be dismantled. The stuff you're talking about. Can't have people thinking critically, asking for more actual information, and not being
Mhm.
satisfied. In a sense, not being satisfied, wanting a new bite and a new bite and a new bite, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's
Mhm.
hey, you're under attack, and if you don't do something about
Mhm.
it, it's
Mhm.
all over. So play on
So
people's
so
fears.
let me have the power.
So let me have the
I'll
and I will save you.
I'll catch you on the other end.
And now
Don't
they're
worry, I'll
speaking
take care of
of
you on the other
cursing
end.
in religious
Give me the power.
terms.
Okay,
You
one
know,
second.
we
Shares?
know that, and we know that the
I'll be back.
Okay,
Okay.
we know that the opposition. I mean, we know that the Democratic Party is a pro-capitalist party, imperialist party, elitist party. For whatever they're worth, though, I don't think they're trying to dismantle the
Liberal
public
democracy.
sector,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They're, just that, right? What was the plan? There's some plan in place. It was in one of the articles. Rage, retire all government employees. What is
Mm-hmm.
that? You know? How you how
Mm-hmm.
do you, how do you run? But that's the point. How do you run a society, a modern society?
Right.
But that's it. We don't want the society running.
That's the point. Exactly.
Just like we don't
Exactly.
want the public schools working. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
defund
So yeah. So no Department of Education, defunded, et cetera, et cetera. And actually that's was the next place my brain was going, is this question of the how to vote, right? The how to vote question. The um what is the priority election
just so you
for
know,
the
we're coming
presidential election,
we're
you know?
coming up on 4 minutes to the top of the hour, just to give you a
I know,
heads.
I see. I
Okay.
see. Um, but so that being said, I'm anticipating going a little bit over, give James a chance to come back and put in some juice as well. But
Mhm.
in in and around this, in and around this question of the who to vote for and the dissatisfaction and critiques of the Democratic Party, long time, that's nothing new. Um, but being able to articulate without being in a contradiction, in some kind of quandary of contradiction, um, that the necessity, what is at the base of the necessity of keeping um, Trump out of office, of keeping Trump as the figurehead, as the exact, keeping that politic out of the directly out of the presidency. But then there are these other factors in terms of what's happening with Congress and who's dominant in Congress and the Supreme Court, right? So how these kinds of factors are juggling. So that would be the next, how to juggle these different factors. So that would be my next question out. What are the electoral priorities, and what do folks need to hear from, as they're searching for information, and whatnot? What do they need to hear from left sources about the election and the issues surrounding them?
I don't know what folks are saying about voting. I mean,
Well,
I
there's
know.
a lot
I mean,
of
uh-huh.
committing, doing the uncommitted movement,
hmm
um, in reaction to, the Gaza genocide, largely, essentially that, don't give the Democrats your vote, the kind of,
Okay.
because of Democrats' status quo
So
politics.
yeah, I see that. I mean, everybody like whatever, right? I mean, talking about the left, I don't see anybody on the left, clapping for any Democratic candidate. Um, but I don't really see. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I live in
Mhm,
California. I don't have to worry about that. I fully expect the Democratic candidate to win California.
mhm,
If I lived in Nevada, I might hold my nose and vote for the Democratic candidate. And really, it would be a vote against the Republican candidate because I do think he's a qualitative difference, right?
mhm,
I mean, that's me personally. Um, 'Cause I think it would be a tactical thing to do. But I can't speak for other. And I feel like I've I've never been on the right. I don't even know what that actually means. Even when I was what growing up a liberal or whatever. I mean, whatever that means, right? You rooted for the Indians, right? And I watch Indian movies, so I can
Mhm.
only speak for myself. Because I do think that, and it's not, again, it's not even the individual who I think is horrible, but it is the people behind him, and what they will be weaponized to do with the state as their tool, even as they might want to dismantle it. They're not dismantling the military structure of it, right? The surveillance structure of it. I already know what the Democrats do with the state, right? They're horrible. I think it can be worse. Just that, right? I think it can be worse. But I live in California. That's not a hard choice for me to make.
Mhm.
Be shot. I don't know what his numbers are in California.
Mhm.
Kamala's from California, right? That should count for
Mhm.
something. Maybe it counts against her because people remember, her as attorney
Yeah.
general, etc. But shit, she's a cop. The cops, king.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
yeah,
Basic question on the floor, James, is the electoral priorities, right? There's some talk about not voting for Democrats because they are, because they're atrocious and don't represent don't really represent uh, any kind of progressive force. Um, don't commit the vote, the uncommitted and whatnot. And then there's, the question of keeping Trump out of office. So the question on the floor is, what is the strategy and are, what can what advice would you give folk who are looking for answers about how to manage this moment with this kind of looming um, project 2025? Is it a moment not to commit, to just vote against that, vote for the Democratic presidential candidate to keep the Republican out of office, or what? Is there some other kind of tactic and strategy? That's the general question.
Yeah, kind of like Yusuf said, I vote generally, Joe, for issues and not for people. Um, I'm in California, so I can vote for Cornel West and Melina Abdullah and not be scared.
right.
But if there is a threat, and because it's an issue, it's not, oh, they're going to govern better than this, than the other one's going to govern better than the other. It's not just that. Is one is an existential threat, uh, and uh, represents, um, like he said, vote for me and you won't have to worry about it. In 4 years, you won't have to worry about voting. Like, what kind of shit is that? What kind of shit is that? If I lived in a state where the margins are like 1-2%, I damn sure would vote for Kamala Harris. I'd have to, not because I like her or have any kind of love for the Democratic Party, but because this dude represents a threat, and it's not just an issue of heightening the contradictions.
Right.
Um, I think Joe Biden and this United States, uh, uh, I think there should be a war crime inquiry for the mass
Mhm.
murder of Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
They're supplying the arms. Anytime they see Libya or uh,
Mm.
Russia or anybody supplying arms to people they don't like, they start threatening them with hauling them before the ICC.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm.
think that they would, I think that's why Bush can't leave the country.
That's right.
He can't leave the country because he committed,
Mm.
these wars of aggression, killed hundreds of thousands of people.
Mhm.
Um, and same with
Mm.
uh, Joe Biden and,
Mhm.
and Kamala Harris. Not so much
Mhm.
her because she's not in charge.
Right.
But she will be in charge, and she will probably carry. She didn't show up to a meeting with Netanyahu. Okay, what is
Mhm.
the policy going to look like?
What is the
Mhm.
policy going to look like?
What's the policy going to look like? Are you going to continue with this criminal activity? But with if it's about the vote, what is in if you're participating in a democracy is I feel like I'm in class. What is democracy? Rule with the consent of the governed. A participatory democracy. You get to have an input. In a Republican democracy, you get your input by handing your vote and desires to this representative.
Mhm.
But like this in this society, we have been and for the foreseeable future, at least hundreds of years, unless something dramatic happens,
Mhm.
permanent minority.
Mhm.
And they don't take our interest. This is why the Democratic Party, first the Republican Party, then the Democratic Party, can do whatever the hell it wants.
Hmm.
Make a bunch of promises and, oh, look at the boogeyman, Trump or Goldwater or whoever. And then we say, okay. But then when it comes down to it, what, we're going to get civil rights, maybe, or you get a little inch, right? Get a little an inch during the Depression. You get another inch during World War II, and then you get another inch after Truman takes office, and then you get another inch with Kennedy, and then Johnson. It was facing war in Vietnam and war at home.
Mhm.
So he had to make a decision, and the hypocrisy of the United States. We're a democracy. No, you're not. No, you're not. You haven't ever been a democracy.
Ever.
If you're talking about representing all of the people, so this idea of, well, I'm going to vote for this person or that person. I think it's like, what are our interests?
Right.
What are our interests, and how can they best be preserved or advanced? And so in California, again, the Trump vote for Trump or Harris is not so critical. In Arizona, it is. My sister is Democratic Party activist. Of course, my family despises Trump. So, and if I was there, I might be campaigning right along. Well, I wouldn't be campaigning, but at least I would be voting. Because Arizona is a deadly place.
Right.
Nazis and Klan march freely. They have a backward society, overwhelmingly white. I think black people make up less than 5% of the population.
It's very small. That's right.
It used to be part of the Confederacy. It has some of the worst reactionary, crazy stuff. And this is why Trump is like, I can't believe I lost. I can't. So I think that is the primary consideration. And looking at it in the long term, or in a larger sense, like around the country, it's like, who's going to protect our interests, but and not shirking from criticism.
Right.
Of these people, just like we're critical of our own leaders, so-called black leaders. We shouldn't shirk our responsibility to engage in criticism of these major party candidates.
That's right.
Democrat, Republican, or whatever the hell.
That's right. That's right. It's an existential threat. It's the vote for, an endorsement of any Democratic program. It's looking at the situation and making a tactical decision about, again, depending on where you are and what your vote means in that place. Right? So, people have to decide for themselves.
So you think it's like, you have the white right on the one hand, again represented by Trump, not only Trump. He didn't lead it, he didn't start it.
Mm-hmm.
Attacking Obama, black folks running to
Mm-hmm.
the defense of Obama, and then he murders Gaddafi and
Mm-hmm.
joyful about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you get when you're a dictator. What? You're a He's a dictator, and Gaddafi is. It was so pitiful. My little brother, why are you doing this? What's going on? And he's can't understand why he's being tortured and stabbed up the ass with a 18-inch American knife
Mm-hmm.
supplied to these people. Shot in the head. They start enslaving black people, putting black people in, doing all kind of atrocities.
Yeah.
And Obama's like,
Neo-reactionary. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So is this what we get? We
Mm-hmm.
can't criticize him. Now he's criticizing himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we should have been criticizing him.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning. That's
Mm-hmm.
right.
And then so-called panic, like in my department, people are like, yeah, we finally got him. Got who? Gaddafi. Now we got both of them, Gaddafi and Saddam. And you're proud of it?
That's the ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people in your department, right? Who?
Yes.
Wow.
With African names, wearing African clothes.
Universities are, they are sites of the system, right? They're about reproducing the system and creating the managerial class for the empire. I mean, that's whatever people are doing theoretically or whatever, that's what they're doing. And the business departments are the biggest departments on campuses.
Mm-hmm.
That is madness.
So, yes, the capacity to.
What do you think?
Be consciously. What do I think about that question?
How would you answer your question?
Essentially how you all answered that question, just the coming out of exercising our capacity to think of ourselves sovereign, from the system of being in it and not of it, to the extent, promoting that view and saying, hey, understanding that neither of these parties serve our interests, historically, except in terms of what James just laid out, right? Kind of this piecemeal graduated, offering,
Mm-hmm.
but these are pieces that we will definitely miss if and as they are taken away. And in terms of that, or we wake up and they're not there. And I think that there is this, as you talked about, Eustace, without the living memory of Jim Crow, without the living memory of Green Book life, without the living memory. Some places that I don't go, not because of a living memory, but because of a mediated memory, because my mama and my elders in my upcoming taught me well about white violence, but we don't have a memory of what it, we don't have that. We don't have a living memory of, no, I'm not going to walk down this street because any random white person can have the, so, have the wherewithal and the, as you said, Yusuf, the weaponization of the state in the same way, to, do with my person as they will. So, how to peak that understanding of the existential threat, in day-to-day conversations, and to come out of some of these subsidiary conversations that people are having, how to do that in in promoting discourse, how to talk to friends and family, always just kind of, again, widening the scope. Um, what is it that we're really looking at? It's not really a conversation about whether you are anti-abortion or feel that, people's genders, I'm not going to change these pronouns because this is ridiculous and they have a point, and, all of these kinds of weird, distractive discourses that are leading folk to the authoritarian trough, breaking
Mhm.
it right down to, let's look at what this plan is and what it's going to mean for you in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day life as of immediately, um the police state for us, the impoverishment,
Can we look at one of those things?
the
One of the project 2025.
25 topics. What do we
Uh,
want to look at?
well, I'm
What
just thinking about the ideas to dismantle the Department of Education.
education. Mm-hmm.
So that means no more Pell Grants for working class students
Mm-hmm.
of all ethnicities.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely going to impact Black students who are still often first generation students, and certainly Latinx students, and all the various, colonized groups of people, folks, First Nations folks. So these Pell Grant, I mean, I think about, my beginning my college journey, and Pell Grant was absolutely necessary to go to St. Mary's. So that would be gone. That's one of the things, and the whole, you don't have to fill out a FAFSA anymore because there ain't no financial aid.
Mm-hmm.
Just apply for scholarships because they don't want anybody working. There's no Department of Education, right? So you got to
Mm-hmm.
apply directly to the college or something like that. Um, but that, just that sort of, how many families is that going to affect? There's still community college, but then are people able to transfer, right, after that because of what is already, the cost of an education, even at a public school where you don't pay tuition technically, right? You pay fees, but those fees are often still prohibitive, even though it's a public school. So no Pell Grants.
Even beyond that, will there be community colleges?
Mm.
Yeah.
Is the state going to continue to support community colleges and state-supported universities? It's again, this is not just a struggle against the Black nation or
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Latinos and stuff. This is a class struggle also. Poor
Mhm.
whites are not going to have it any or much better. They'll have the psychological advantage of, hey, I'm still white.
Right.
I still have something going for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But hold on a second.
I'm headed out.
Okay.
I left some flyers in there.
Let me-
Some on the table.
Okay.
So I don't know if they would have to, if he were to win, if these are things that have to go through Congress,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not they're able to keep both houses of Congress. I mean, I've seen in several
Mhm.
states,
Mm-hmm.
Democratic candidates were
Yeah.
leading handily and not even being dragged down by Biden. And I would assume
Yeah.
then maybe they have a boost now.
Mm-hmm.
So as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, right, it's even
Right.
that's in play, right? What the two houses of Congress, and the Democrats keep the Senate? Will they get the House back, et cetera? Is it, et cetera?
Those dynamics as well. And yeah, James, this, whatever these gains, like you said earlier, Yusuf, the roll back to I think it might have, was it Cheney? I don't know where that statement came from, but the roll back all the gains of the 20th
Yeah,
century.
yeah. Roll back to 20th century. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone said something about all roll back
One of these foundation
Enlightenment,
dudes said it. Yeah. Roll back the Enlightenment.
roll
Yes.
back the Enlightenment,
That.
separate and distinct
Yeah.
from the articulation about
If
the
you roll
dark
back the
Enlightenment
Enlightenment, you don't
philosophy.
get the 20th century.
Yeah, so these poor, poor whites, you find out, quite quickly, it would have to feel like quicksand. It would have to feel like a landslide into
Mhm,
immiseration and impoverishment.
Mhm.
Totally unexpected,
mhm,
totally because,
mhm,
again, that a total psychological shock because of the ways in which people don't understand how their government is structured and how, what this domino effect is going to look like. And even
mhm,
just, just the level of mayhem uh, uh, and insecurity. But another note, something that they've made prominent in this document relative to public school, right,
mhm.
and education, that folks are talking about in terms of work that has been done to identify and counteract the school to prison pipeline, you know. And I think also that is likely inclusive of restorative justice models that are being implemented in schools for conflict resolution and all these kinds of things. And there's some strong articulation about um, uh, removing or, reasserting school discipline models that remove troubled children so they can get the help that they need while our children are protected from da 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 and all these kinds. So there is this kind of something that speaks to the reforms, right, that have been made in that same uh, 20th century push to, the notion of what happens with poor children, quote unquote,
Mhm.
institutionalizing and the institutionalization of poor
Mhm.
what they're doing. I don't know what the particular document says about child labor laws, but we know they're working assiduously to
Right.
dismantle child labor laws. Folk without these contexts, without these cornerstones of understanding, yes, James, as you said, it could easily look like a people of color issue, a white supremacy issue. Folk aren't understanding that these games are all interconnected.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. I mean,
They are
this is
interconnected.
no breakfast programs, right? No federally funded breakfast program at the school, and as again, what it isn't hillbilly elegy is about that class, right? I mean, it doesn't,
Yes.
kind of a hit job on the class, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
right.
And if you want to slash taxes,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to slash taxes and take services away to the rich.
Right.
Right.
Slash taxes and take services away from poor people.
From yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, oops, no social security. Really?
No social security, no health care,
Come
no
on.
no fixing of the roads.
Fixing of the
Yeah,
roads.
no support for anything. The
Mhm.
rich people, the top
Right.
5%, or what is
Yes.
it, not 1%,
Yes.
5%, they're fine. They might live in a gated community, whatever. They might have helicopter pads. They don't have to travel on the road. Everyday people have to travel on the roads. They need that common good, you know,
Mhm.
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
Yes.
payment towards the common good.
Yes.
Of course, these people are cutting their own throats. You take away health care, and then you hire people um, who come into the country or are just poor, and then next thing you know, they have tuberculosis, they have
Yes.
dengue fever, they have all
Yes.
those things, but they're taking away the ability of people to protect themselves from these illnesses,
Right.
uh, not thinking that it's going to kill them because they just don't
No.
deserve it. They're lazy, no good, ignorant people, and we're going to keep them
Yeah.
ignorant,
Right. And
Yeah.
dirty.
dirty,
Yes. Yes.
the dirty, unwashed masses.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Marginalized otherwise. That's been my listening, not my reading, my audible, my book on tape for the past few weeks. Nancy Eisenberg, white trash, 400 years of class in America, you know,
Mhm.
and the establishment of that as do so many other thinkers, and even in, like the discussion of racial capitalism and what have you, that this notion of a disposable set of human beings,
Mhm.
whose purpose in the caste order is
Right.
to be the support and the just waste needed to fertilize the
That's right.
fields of
Because
the
they're
wealthy.
often defined as waste, right? I mean, literally
Folks,
defined as
define
waste.
trash, right?
Trash. Right.
Trash, off scourings, whatever, all of the pejorative names and all, right?
Hmm.
It's embedded.
Superfluous appendages.
Hmm.
Yes,
Superfluous. Right.
embedded in the culture, in the culture, that original, interpretation of the Constitution, that where we were never meant to have rights. Well, you know what, poor white man,
Right.
neither were you.
Neither were you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
You had no enfranchisement, but and there's certainly no living memory of that
Right.
in their generations, except in academic circles. You know what I'm saying? So these and then also the theocratic element, that theocratic element. We've been talking about the political stuff, but there's this theocratic element, and so there's so much of this, and in terms of, back to this education piece, right? Funding, taking, not only taking out, the attack on wokeism and all of that bullshit, but the uplifting and the funding of theologically based curriculum and
Mhm.
ideas, and so that we can all say, yeah, we there's a historicity to the arc moment, or whatever it is,
Or whatever. But yes, that's right.
these kinds of things. So a kind of a cultural effect, that also really leans into um, the the systematic uneducation of the masses of folk. That is the same conflict that came to the surface during the pandemic. To
Hmm.
mask or not to mask, what vaccine, the total loss of memory of the value, and the fundamental workings of vaccination.
Right.
And you can insert any story you want in the blank space. You can insert any story you want. So, yeah, there's it means a lot. There's a lot at stake.
Hmm.
Yeah. Most people don't realize, when they're watching and enjoying, Game of Thrones and now House of Dragons, that you're the small folk. You're not the great folk in the big houses and the castles. You're the small folk, right? And so look at how the small folk are used as you're watching it, right? Because the two series are very clear about that class distinction. And also, at least in the
Yes.
current series, actually, even Game of Thrones, there are some elements of the small group of the big folks' fear of the small folk ultimately, right? And so their need for the army,
Mm-hmm.
military arm, to
Mm-hmm.
suppress the wishes and maintain the mystery, of their special character and all this. But people need to watch the show and think, no, you're not one of the princes.
Mm-mm.
Likely, you're one of the small folk. And look at how
Mm-hmm.
small folk are used. Just as they say, fodder, right? And bodies, like I said, as was the military term, pawns, right? Or the chess term. I mean, really, pawns to be moved around. This is
Absolutely.
really what they think of you.
Grow my food and fight my wars.
Grow my food and fight my wars. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're there
And
for.
your daughters and sons to me every now and then too.
Yeah, for consumption.
You know,
Or
So,
consumption.
and oh, that's a very promising one right there. So we'll pull him out of the muck. But never shall nobility he be. But anyway,
Right?
maybe,
Everything in between.
etc. Right.
And
So
everything in between.
it's a real thing. Um,
Yeah.
and we know in the upcoming election, it's set up that the bourgeoisie will win regardless of which party wins. I mean, we know those things. We know that the U.S. empire, continues to be global, but hey, the Sahelian states have offered
Mm-hmm.
example, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
um, then, and there are other examples, right? And that, we have to be looking for. Um, as far as I know, there's been resistance to the attempt to overthrow the results of the Venezuelan, election.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
people, Venezuelans, supporters of the government on the street, right? So, um,
Mm-hmm.
election observers, right, are
Mm-hmm.
defending the
Mm-hmm.
election. So they don't
Mm-hmm.
win everywhere. They aren't winning everywhere. Um,
Yes.
right now they're desperate. It's a desperate time, but we've talked about that before. Sometimes that's when they're the most dangerous, but
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless
Mm-hmm.
we are winning,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's incremental, and then
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you get a big push, but
Mm-hmm.
we will
And
see.
all the countries recognizing Maduro's presidency
Right,
and the predictable actors, the predictable allies,
right.
sycophants, denying it, but otherwise everybody else is like, yeah, that went like it was supposed to go. Yeah, he did it, and yes, congratulations,
And the
president.
check, the auditing of the election checks out,
Mm-hmm.
and this whole thing about, well, it doesn't match the exit polls. Exit polls, Venezuela doesn't have exit polls. At least they aren't
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, right?
Okay.
Because
Mm-hmm.
how exit polls can influence an election.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the United States, what did they, what did the policy become?
Mm-hmm.
Not report exit polls until all polls have closed.
Mm-hmm.
Something
Mm-hmm.
to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was learned that exit polls can influence
Mm-hmm.
outcome. People, why should I vote? It's a blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, blah. So anyway, um,
Mm-hmm.
those are signs of the crisis, and we know what the empire is going to do.
Yeah.
I don't want. I mean, just selfish, whatever, short-sighted, whatever. I don't want somebody fully backed by these dark enlightenment neo-reactionary folks, as the most powerful
Mm-mm.
pirate captain
Mm-mm.
on the planet, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Harris, and really this it's the system itself, right? It is the structures themselves. But in some ways, these guys are talking about dismantling the structures in such a way that cements their
Yeah,
power, right? As the most
absolutely.
retrograde kind of. So yeah,
Absolutely. Because it was through those mechanisms, those well, some of the liberal democratic mechanisms and under the force of our people power that
yes,
as you have said, democratic space, um, some space has been gained. That
hmm,
so they're trying to close the gate, trying to
right,
close the gate, send it in reverse and close off the passages and whatnot to set the trap. But
that's right.
um, you know, um, not to be successful, and there's a lot to be optimistic about. There's a
Yeah,
lot
that's
to be
right.
optimistic about.
I'm looking for the next edition of the Positive Leftist News. Should be about that time, right? Uh,
Yeah,
for a new report. The
yeah.
I don't want to forget to share the
Hmm.
those articles, right? So the Dark
Okay.
Enlightenment, right? If folks want to check out the Dark Enlightenment, they can go to populismstudies.org. Populismstudies.org, and you can probably do a search there for Dark Enlightenment. Yeah, populismstudies.org.
Yes.
And that's from the European Center for Populism Studies. And then the other article, and by Gil Duran, where J.D. Vance gets his weird, terrifying techno-authoritarian ideas. And that is the New Republic, actually, where you will find that article, newrepublic.com. The author is Gil, Gil Duran, Duran, where J.D. Vance gets his weird, terrifying, techno-authoritarian ideas. I guess I can put that on the screen real quick. No. Well, let's see what happens if I press share screen. It's okay. It's a little more complicated. Never mind. So, if you're watching this later, just rewind a little.
And you'll hear it.
You'll get it. Yes, but populismstudies.org, Dark Enlightenment, and newrepublic.com. Where did J.D. Vance get his weird techno-authoritarian ideas?
Right on. And with our, how far over are we? Past
We're
our
a lot
plan?
over, but I figured we'd wait for James to come back before we signed off.
Sign off. Yeah,
It's
we are
36.
37 minutes past the
Yeah,
time that we
that's okay.
designated.
That's okay. Because let's wait for James to come back. And there are other little tidbits in the news, I guess, right? Stuff's been going on. There's James.
Yes, good brother James. We are we intended an hour. Here we are, 40 minutes past that hour. It's all right. You got any ending thoughts before we wrap up and sign off?
No, y'all keep doing what you're doing.
You keep joining us, James. You have been from literally day one. You have literally been there from the first Joko.
Yeah, but the work is so important. I just wish it can be documented. I wish every Joko was documented, reduced to writing, digitized, whatever, and so people could benefit from it.
And possibly possible.
Mm-hmm.
Good, but there's what people call anti-intellectualism.
Mm-hmm.
So, y'all educated, but you ain't got common sense. You ain't got street sense.
Mm-hmm.
Which is some of the most ignorant shit imaginable, because it takes all kind of intelligence.
Right.
And somebody said, well, you can educate someone not to vote for Trump, but what about the next one? Like people have been saying, everybody, they want me to go in the community and teach critical thinking. But you can't guard against voting against a fascist if you don't understand what a fascist is, what the consequences will be.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you all about doing something, a podcast basically on critical thinking and taking some of these issues and breaking them down so people won't be confused, and not so much in a political kind of way, not in a partisan way, but this is a lie. I mean, Kamala Harris was only an Indian, and then all of a sudden she wanted to be black. Which is, it's like, well, that's a lie. So
simply
what
a lie.
lie about? So he had a whole series of lies at that point.
Mhm.
And he avoided this. It's like, oh my God, see, I need to break this thing down. I could do a whole semester
Yeah.
on just the arguments and the false arguments, the irrational arguments.
Mhm.
Um, so in terms of guarding against this 2025 and this so-called creeping authoritarianism, or not so creeping,
But not so creeping.
Mhm.
um, we need. And then my students say, like I said, one student, I like Trump because he gave niggas stimmies uh, and they got bans. It's like, uh, uh, what?
Because what?
Are you a hoe? I mean, what?
Because
Somebody
what? No, see, I literally didn't understand what you said. Because what?
because he gave folks stimmies and put bans in niggas' pockets in Watts.
Okay. Yeah, that is what you said. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
wild.
it is what he said.
That's
Yeah.
wild. But yeah. Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
is? How can you guard against this kind of thought? And then you have crazy people like, what's her name? Amber Rose.
Mhm.
Yeah. Come
And
on. Opportunist.
she's at the Republican convention, and then the next second she's trying to raise money for Kamala Harris. What's wrong with
What are
you?
you
What?
doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
I
What the
didn't. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Neither did I.
literally. And
Neither did I.
at the Republican convention, and then this last week, is it the last week or this week? She's doing a fundraising for Kamala Harris.
Okay.
That's so weird. I would really love to hear her explanation. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Because she's of a generation. I have this
Wow.
riding theory, about the consequences of the lack of living memory and what's been lost, in these interim generations, past, legal social integration and whatnot. And I think some of our young people are just that confused. I think
Yeah.
it speaks to, I mean, it's not even, I said something about opportunists, but I don't even think this is about cynicism or, except just kind of just the really fundamental keep me in a spotlight, kind of a thing, but I don't even think that there's like, what is it? What do they call it? Malice of forethought. I don't think there's any
Mhm.
malice of forethought involved.
Yeah, but again, it's just not this generation. When I was in high school, I'm with these group of brothers and sisters, and I started talking about the Klan. Because my family, especially my mother, she wanted to be a Klan killer. She wanted to bomb
Mhm.
Klan rallies.
Mhm.
The Klan, and she was put out. They sent her out of Georgia because she refused to accept segregation.
Mhm.
So I'm telling them about the Klan and how they dressed and stuff, and they said, "Oh, what kind of crazy shit is that? Ain't nobody running around here with pointed hoods on." And they just
Stop.
not believe anything I said. And you know what? Go home and ask your parents. Go home and ask your parents.
Well,
And they went home and asked their parents, well, damn, that shit is true. I
and
gave
these were your peers
my
when you
peers,
were in
this
high
is
school.
high school.
Okay.
When
Wow.
in college, I gave my girlfriend I had 100 Years of Lynching. So she read it. And she's like, this is crazy. I never knew about this. Her parents were from Mississippi.
That's
Wow.
right. That's
So
right.
Wow.
she said, why didn't you tell me about this? She presented
Mhm.
the book to him. Why didn't you tell me about this? He said, give me that book. So he read it. Within a week, he gave it back and he said, it's not good to open up old sores. He
Yeah.
talk
That
about
there it is.
victims of the Holocaust or the children of victims don't want to tell their children.
No,
Yep.
that's right. That
They
is
don't want to tell their children because they don't want that scar. I don't want them to feel.
I don't want them to feel, etc. Yes,
I've
and
heard
that
it
has
said
been
directly.
Mhm.
by several Black elders.
Yeah.
I've heard it said directly.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
thought
So,
it was a new day. We didn't want to pass on old
oh, bitterness.
years, this, that, and
Right.
the other.
No, talk about it. Talk about it.
Yes,
They left the subsequent generations unprepared. Right?
Right.
yes,
You're
Right.
facing it through every generation.
yes.
People don't want to talk about being a crackhead when they were younger, or
Right.
being crack babies, because that's a whole generation now whose children are 20 years old. A bunch of crack babies having 20-year-olds right now. What the hell happened?
Right.
Mhm.
When I came to LA, there were hardly any Black people on Skid Row. Now,
Right.
Um,
Now it's almost completely Black.
it's all up.
so it's like we need to stop running from the truth.
Right.
And it's not just this generation. It's not just our generation. It's even the generation before. I don't want to talk about that slavery stuff.
Right. I don't want to talk
That's
about
right.
that slavery stuff.
That's right.
You know, well, yeah. Why you got to write a book like this? Right? Why you got to make a movie like that? yourself,
Exactly.
Right?
I don't
wanna
watch those
that,
kind of
that
movies.
old stuff and
Yep.
what is that? Whatever that what Will I Am from the Black Eyed Peas? Something about can we all just get amnesia and start over type shit? But that's the vibe, right? Let's forget
Mhm.
all that, and
Yeah.
it's a fresh day, as if you can
Yeah.
just start from whole cloth again.
Yeah. And you know who else don't want us to remember? Donald Trump, the governor of Florida, the governor of Arizona, all these people.
The state superintendent of education in Georgia that
Yeah.
just banned the Afro-Am AP class.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So Kentucky, all of them.
It's direct. It is
Yeah.
a direct attack on knowledge, a
The
direct
class would be
attack
divisive.
on ideas
Yeah.
Yeah.
that threaten the status quo. Successfully penetrated. They understand that
Mhm.
this shit is actually dismantling our shit. And it's
Right,
got
exactly.
So we can't do that, and we can't forget the one drop rule.
Hmm.
Yep.
We can't forget it,
Saving grace.
and we need to be. I'm starting a whole new conversation, but we we need to define what we. So when we say Black, and they say, well, it's race, and it's not really a race, and we're all the human race, and this and that, and then it's a socially constructed. No, it's a politically constructed thing.
There it is. Thank you.
It's politically constructed, and it affects
Yes.
the economy. It
Thank
affects the education. It affects
Yes.
everything.
There's nothing.
So no, when I say I'm a revolutionary Black nationalist, that's what I mean. I believe that Black people are a nation, and Clyde has kept most Black people believe that, and
That's
white
right.
people believe it because they've treated us.
They
not
treat
as
us like a foreign nation.
Yeah, remember when George Bush was looking at Katrina, and he said, "Oh, those poor people." He's looking at it like he was watching something that was happening in Haiti.
Exactly. That's right.
So
Yes.
we got a lot of work to do. That's why I love the
Yes,
joke,
we do.
because y'all sharpen my dull mind. Y'all, you gotta
James, honestly.
what do you call it? One of them sharpening stones.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
rub my head against
Yeah.
my brain against it, because otherwise, I hope I wouldn't be so dull, but I might fall into the same trap as so many other people.
Right. As all, yeah.
Because but that's a reality, right?
Yeah.
That's a reality. That's like something that is, right, understood, like in terms of just like literal cognitive science, if what you don't use, you lose. What you don't, there's an ongoing process. Again, that is a projection from a pro-intellectual cultural practice, right? So something more than just a token of the idea of lifelong learning, and the intrinsic and inherent value that every person should be that it's not a specialization, an area of specialization, talent or privilege, but that it's something that is part of the commons, must be part of the the common place
Right.
Right.
of the members of society. So, I'm always inspired by that image of the literacy brigades,
Mm-hmm.
carrying the big pencils and that whole striding forth to, to eradicate illiteracy. Never mind, this is truly a whole other conversation that we'll get back to. Is what literacy looks like. Functional literacy looks like in the U.S. Never mind subject literacy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes. What are we really dealing with, and how do we overcome it? And we can, and we will, because that's what it is to be human. To be human is to be ingenious. So we'll figure it out. If we put this part on it, we're gonna figure it out.
Right on.
Right on. And so at almost 9 o'clock,
2 hours, yes, coming
we
up.
will have to do this again soon. This was great.
Very soon.
James.
In fact, sooner than later, and for sure.
Yeah.
And hopefully I won't be at Chuco's running around like a ant.
Yeah. Well, the Chuco report is kind of cool, though. So, if you happen to be at Chuco's, it isn't the worst, right?
No, it's fine.
Because on the ground, right, events and organizing, which again, part of, people need to know about the on ground events organizing. So we're about to sign off. Any announcements folks want to make? It is Black August.
Black
right?
August, what y'all doing?
The next event is the August 7th program here at Chuco's, Youth Day. Then the 11th is the tribute to the martyrs at the Black Panther Party breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Then the 21st on political prisoners and a tribute to G2.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Then the 31st, there'll be a Karamo. There'll also be a Capo Angola holder. There are going to be, people are adding things to the calendar as usual.
Okay.
There's going to be yoga classes online.
Great. Yay.
There's going to be a couple of other things that I know of, the stuff in the future.
That's great. So that's Black August LA.
Right on.
Black August LA, and then whoever wants to contribute a program.
Right. Okay. And where's Chuco's?
7625 South Central Avenue.
South Central Avenue. All right.
Used to be the, I think the Kenyan Juvenile Justice Center.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and White Front before then.
Okay. So it's a liberated space now.
It's a lovely space. And when is the Martyrs Tour?
The 24th, I think. The 24th.
Okay.
Out of Chuco's again. What was I going to? Oh, and so we have, for some reason, there's an explosion in interest in Black August. So we have these various, not youth organizations of younger folks. Black Men Build, Party for Socialism and Liberation, Black Autonomy, or representatives from there, individuals from there. We even have Lala, Taco's so-called current wife, in the audience right now.
Okay.
Shocking. But he's here to spy.
Possibly.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
We saw, our eyes met, and I know where she's coming from.
Yeah.
She knows where I'm coming from. So, but at least she gave me a nod.
All right. Yes, that's right. That's right. Do we have any announcements, Tasha? And we should also. Oh no, I'm sorry. Just that calendar of events, James. Is it? We can access that because we can, so we can be announcing it also.
The Black August
Yeah.
calendar on Facebook.
Okay, on Facebook. Okay, cool. I'm sorry, Tasha. Are any announcements?
Nope, we don't have any announcements. That was the biggest announcement. Find
Yeah.
the Black August calendar on Facebook.
Right. Well, there are plans for a Black to School teach-in near the end of August, right? As folks will be going back to school and preparing to go back to school. But that's just in the planning stages. So more on that later. And do want to remind people about the Uhuru 3, right? And so y'all might want to check them out. And again, I know they want supporters to get down to Tampa for the trial is September 3rd, and I think that weekend there may be events going on. So go ahead and take a moment to uphold the Uhuru 3. This attack on, as we're talking about, democracy and the attacks on democracy.
Absolutely.
Here's the establishment again, but again, it's nothing new, right? Tamping down on freedom of speech, right? That they deem unpopular, right, or not in their interest. So, any viewers, do your homework on the Uhuru 3. Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party, Penny Hess of the African People Solidarity Committee, and Jesse Neville of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And I think, in terms that's all I think I have to announce. I want to repeat, we will be back for a Joko conversation sooner than later.
And later.
Y'all won't be missing us long. So I will go ahead. We'll chat it up. We'll go ahead and get out of here. And folks, YouTube land, Facebook land, wherever you may be, stick with us. Free Palestine, free Africa, global Africa, forward the global socialist revolution. Yeah, I said it. That's right.
What?
The global working class.
See, and I thought this was a intimate conversation between three friends.
That's right.
And it is an intimate conversation between three friends.
That's right.
It's nothing more and nothing less.
That's right.
Right. So right on.
All right.
Let's
get to some real peace and power, folks.
Real peace and power, folks.
All right.
I'm taking y'all off stage.
Free the land, kill the Klan.
All right. And folks, you heard him. We out.